Your life, your rules building wealth in a shifting economy. The old deal is broken. Here is how to build a new one on your terms. A note before we begin: nobody taught you this in school. They taught you the periodic table. They taught you how to analyze a poem. They may have taught you, if you were lucky, the rudiments of algebra or how to write a persuasive essay. But the thing that would shape the texture and the freedom of your daily life more than almost any other single factor is how money actually works, how wealth is actually built, how to make your financial decisions in a world that is economically volatile and structurally unlike anything the previous generation navigated. They left to chance. Most of us learned about money the way we learned about relationships, by osmosis, by example, by trial and an uncomfortable amount of error. We absorbed the financial habits and beliefs of the households we grew up in, and we carried them into our adult lives largely unexamined. And for a long time, that was survivable because the economic structure was stable enough that if you followed the conventional script, you would probably be okay. We are not in that environment anymore. The economic landscape of 2026 is characterized by a volatility that is not temporary turbulence but structural change. Inflation has eroded the purchasing power of savings. Traditional employment has become less stable as automation reshapes entire industries. The financial instruments that previous generations relied on, such as company pensions, stable property markets, and predictable returns on conservative investments, are no longer performing as advertised. And the gap between those who understand money and those who do not is widening at a pace that should alarm anyone who cares about economic fairness. This book is for anyone ready to stop being a passive participant in their financial life. It is not a get-rich-quick manual. There are no secrets here, no schemes, no promises that feel too good to be true because they are. What this book offers is something more durable, genuine financial literacy for the actual world we live in, delivered in language that respects your intelligence without assuming prior knowledge, your life, your rules. Let's build them. Part 1, Knowing Where You Stand. Chapter 1, Your Financial Reality Check. We begin with the hardest thing, the truth. Not a motivational story about someone who turned their finances around. Not a theoretical framework. The truth about your financial situation right now, as you read this, is the life you are living. If that sentence made you feel a small contraction of discomfort, a faint impulse to skim past this part and get to the actionable stuff, I want you to notice that. Because that impulse is itself information. It tells you something about your relationship with money that is worth paying attention to before we look at any numbers at all. Money is one of the most emotionally charged topics in human life, more so, in many people's experiences, than religion, sex, or politics. This is not accidental. Money is tangled up with our deepest beliefs about our worth, our safety, our freedom, our power, and our belonging. The way we handle money is rarely purely rational. It is saturated with the emotional residue of the households we grew up in, the experiences we have had, and the stories we have been told about which kinds of people have money and which don't. Before we look at spreadsheets and strategies, we need to look at stories. Because your financial story is running in the background of every financial decision you make, and you cannot rewrite it without first reading it. Your money story. Every person has a money story, a set of beliefs, often unconscious, about what money means, how it is obtained, whether there is enough of it, whether they deserve it, and what happens to people who have it or don't. These beliefs were formed early, often through observation of the adults around you, and they are remarkably persistent even in the face of evidence that contradicts them. Common money stories include: money is always scarce and must be hoarded. Money is shameful or corrupting, and good people don't pursue it. Money is something that happens to other people, not people like me. Money is dangerous because having it makes you a target. Money is easy come, easy go, and there will always be more. None of these stories is true or false. All of them have consequences for the financial decisions you muck. Write down the 3 things you most often heard about money growing up. Whose voice do you hear saying them? Complete the sentence. People who have a lot of money are. Without editing your first response. What does that reveal? What is your earliest memory involving money? What did you learn from it? It's honest financial inventory now. With some awareness of the emotional landscape, we can look at the numbers. This is not about judgment. It is about clarity. You cannot navigate from a location you refuse to identify on the map. Rut ura income. What is your total monthly income from all sources after tax? Include employment income, freelance or side income, rental income, and investment returns. Write the actual numk. Rut ura expenses. What do you actually spend each month? Not what you think, you spend what you actually spend. Pull your last 3 months of bank and credit card statements and categories you're spending honestly. Most people discover meaningful surprises, rut ura debts. What do you owe, to whom, at what interest rate, with what monthly payment? List everything: consumer debt, student loans, car finance, mortgage, and informal debts to family or friends. Rut ura assets. What do you own that has value? Property, savings, investments, pension or retirement accounts, valuable possessions. Assign rough values as honestly as you can. Rut ura net worth, assets minus debts. This number, whatever it is your starting point, not your destiny. Your starting point. Most people have never done this exercise. The discomfort it generates is real and worth sitting with, because the alternative, continuing to navigate your financial life without a clear map, is how people find themselves in crisis without understanding how they got there. You cannot build a new financial life from inside a story you have never examined. The first act of financial intelligence is not opening a brokerage account. It is opening your eyes. Chapter 2: Understanding the system. So you can work with it. Most people feel powerless around money because they do not understand the system they are operating in. And systems you do not understand tend to operate on you rather than for you. The global financial system is genuinely complex, and some people have spent entire careers studying narrow slices of it without fully understanding the whole. I am not going to pretend that this chapter will give you a complete picture. What it will give you is the functional literacy you need to make intelligent decisions about your own financial life, without jargon, without condescension, and without the false comfort of oversimplification. What inflation actually does to your money. Inflation is the rate at which the purchasing power of money declines over time. When inflation is running at 5% annually, something that cost £100, dollars or naira last year costs 105 this year. Your money, sitting in a savings account earning 2% interest, is losing 3% of its real value every year. This matters enormously for how you think about saving and investing. Cash is not a neutral store of value. In an inflationary environment, cash is a slowly melting asset. The longer you hold it without deploying it into something that grows at or above the rate of inflation, the less of it you effectively have. Understanding this single concept changes how many people think about emergency funds, savings accounts, and the urgency of investing. How interest rates shape everything. Central banks use interest rates as their primary lever for managing economic activity. When rates are low, borrowing is cheap, spending is encouraged, and asset prices tend to rise. When rates are high, borrowing is expensive, spending slows, and asset prices tend to fall. This has practical implications for you at every stage of your financial life. High interest rates make debt more expensive and therefore more dangerous. They also make certain fixed income investments more attractive. Low interest rates make borrowing cheaper, which is useful if you are taking on a mortgage. Still, they also push investors toward riskier assets in search of returns, which can inflate asset bubbles. Understanding the current interest rate environment is an essential context for almost every significant financial decision. The asset-liability distinction. Robert Kiyosaki's central contribution to popular financial thinking, for all the debate his work generates, is a distinction that is genuinely clarifying. The difference between an asset and a liability. An asset, in the sense Kiyosaki means it, is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. By this definition, a house you live in is not an asset. It is a liability because it costs you money every month in mortgage payments, maintenance, insurance, and taxes. A house you rent out, and that generates more income than it costs, is an asset. A car is almost always a liability, depreciating while costing you in insurance, fuel, and maintenance. A skill that generates consulting income is an asset. A business that runs without your direct, constant involvement is an asset. An investment portfolio that generates dividends is an asset. The wealthy, by and large, accumulate assets. The financially struggling, by and large, accumulate liabilities while believing they are accumulating assets. This single reframe, asking of every significant financial commitment, "Does this put money in my pocket or take it out?" is worth more than most financial advice. Reflection: look at your list of assets and liabilities from Chapter 1. How many of the things you listed as assets are genuinely generating income? How many are actually liabilities in disguise? Part 2. Building your own economy. Chapter 3, Income is not wealth. This is perhaps the most important thing in this book, and it is worth stating plainly before we go any further. A high income does not make you wealthy. It makes you high-earning. These are not the same thing, and confusing them is one of the most common and most costly financial mistakes people make. Individuals who earn six-figure salaries are, in any meaningful financial sense, broke because they have built a lifestyle that consumes every pound or dollar they earn, carry significant debt, and have no investments, no assets, and no financial buffer. Remove the income for 6 months, and everything collapses. And there are people with modest incomes who, through consistent and intelligent financial behavior over time, have built genuine financial security because they understood early that the goal was not to earn more, but to accumulate assets. To build the kind of wealth that does not depend on showing up somewhere every day and exchanging time for money. The distinction between earned income and asset income is the distinction between financial dependence and financial freedom. Earned income stops when you stop. Asset income, in principle, continues regardless. Understanding the major asset classes building wealth requires understanding what you can build it with. Here is an honest overview of the major asset classes available to ordinary people in 2026. Property remains one of the most widely accessible wealth-building vehicles in many parts of the world. Residential property, particularly in growing urban areas, has historically appreciated over time while also generating rental income. The leverage available through mortgage financing means that property allows relatively small initial capital to control relatively large assets. The downsides are equally real. Property is illiquid, management-intensive, and significantly affected by local market conditions, interest rate changes, and regulatory environments. It is not a passive investment. Equities, shares in publicly traded companies, represent ownership in businesses and have historically delivered the strongest long-term returns of any major asset class. The challenge is volatility. Equity markets can fall sharply in the short term, requiring either a long time horizon or the emotional fortitude to hold through downturns without panic selling. Index funds, which track the performance of broad market indices rather than attempting to pick individual winners, are the approach most consistently recommended by evidence-based financial research for ordinary investors. Bonds and fixed-income instruments offer more predictable returns with lower volatility than equities, but in most environments, deliver returns closer to or below the inflation rate. They play a useful role in a diversified portfolio, particularly as a stabilizer during equity market downturns, but are rarely the primary engine of wealth building for someone in the accumulation phase of their financial life. Business ownership, whether through building your own enterprise or investing in someone else's, is the asset class that has created more significant wealth than any other. A business that generates income independently of your direct daily involvement, whether that is a physical business, a digital product, a franchise, or a stake in a growing company, is one of the most powerful wealth-building vehicles available. It is also the highest risk, highest effort, and most knowledge-intensive. Digital and alternative assets, including cryptocurrencies, digital real estate, intellectual property, and other emerging asset classes, represent genuine opportunities in 2026, but also genuine risks. They are more volatile, less regulated, and less historically tested than traditional asset classes. They should be approached with serious research, genuine risk tolerance, and capital you can genuinely afford to lose, the foundation before the opportunity. Before you invest in any asset class, 3 foundational elements need to be in place. Without them, even sound investments become fragile. Right arrow an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of living expenses, held in accessible cash or near cash. This is not an investment. It is insurance, the buffer that prevents a short-term crisis from becoming a long-term financial catastrophe. Without it, any unexpected expense can force you into debt or compel you to liquidate investments at the wrong time. Right arrow high-interest debt eliminated. Carrying consumer debt at 12, 18, or 24% interest while investing for returns of 7 or 8% is mathematically self-defeating. Pay the expensive debt first every time, without exception. Right arrow a clear understanding of your risk tolerance and time horizon. Risk tolerance is not just about how much volatility you can intellectually accept. It is about how much you can emotionally accept, because investment decisions made in panic during a market downturn are almost always poor ones. Be honest about this before you invest, not after. Wealth is not what you earn. It is what you keep, deploy, and grow. The gap between those who understand this and those who don't is where most of the world's financial inequality is created. Chapter 4: Multiple Streams. The new normal there is a thought experiment worth sitting with. Imagine that your income, whatever it currently is, from whatever source it currently comes, stops tomorrow. Not gradually, not with notice, just stopped. How long could you maintain your current life? How long before the reserves ran out? How long before the decisions became desperate? For most people who depend on a single source of income, the honest answer is between 2 and 6 months. For many, it is less. And in a world where entire job categories are being restructured by automation, where companies are restructured by economic conditions, where health can change overnight, a single income stream is not security. It is a single point of failure. Multiple income streams are not a luxury. They are a structural response to structural vulnerability. And in 2026, building them will be more accessible than ever. The income stream spectrum. Income streams exist on a spectrum from fully active, requiring your direct time and attention to generate income, to fully passive, generating income with no ongoing input required. In practice, almost nothing is truly passive, especially in the early stages of building it. But the goal is to move progressively toward an income that requires less of your time per pound or dollar generated. Active income streams include employment, freelancing, consulting, and service-based businesses. These are the most immediately accessible, but also the most time-dependent. They stop when you stop. For most people, active income is the foundation from which other streams are funded, the engine that generates the surplus that builds everything else. Semi-passive income streams include rental income from property, income from a business that employs others to run it, royalties from intellectual property, and affiliate or referral income. These require significant upfront investment of time, money, or both, but then generate income with lower ongoing time requirements. Passive income streams include dividends from equity investments, interest from bonds or lending platforms, and income from digital products or content that continues to sell without ongoing creation. These are the most desirable and the most difficult to build from nothing. They typically require years of accumulation before they generate meaningful income. Building your second stream. The most common mistake people make in trying to build multiple income streams is attempting to build too many at once. Diversification of income is a goal, but it is achieved sequentially rather than simultaneously. Trying to start 3 side businesses while working full-time, managing investments, and launching a digital product will result in 5 mediocre efforts rather than 1 successful one. The practical approach is this: identify the single additional income stream that is most aligned with your existing skills, most accessible given your current time and capital constraints, and most likely to generate meaningful returns within a realistic timeframe. Build that one to a stable state before adding another. Right arrow skills audit. What do you know how to do that other people would pay for? This is not a rhetorical question. Make a list. Include professional skills, life skills, creative skills, and knowledge domains. You almost certainly have more to offer than you are currently monetizing. Right arrow market validation. Before investing significant time or money in a new income stream, test whether there is genuine demand. Talk to potential customers. Offer the service at reduced cost to a small number of early clients. Create a minimum viable version of the product and see if anyone buys it. Validate before you build. Right arrow reinvestment discipline. The income from your first additional stream should be reinvested into building the next one, not absorbed into lifestyle inflation. The compounding of income streams, each one funding the next, is how the model actually works. Reflection. If you had to generate an additional 500 units of your local currency per month within the next 3 months, using only your existing skills and knowledge, what would you do? The specificity of that answer tells you something important. Chapter 5 Navigating Volatility. The financial landscape of 2026 is not a calm sea with occasional storms. It is a dynamic environment in which volatility is the baseline condition, not the exception. Currency values shift. Commodity prices swing. Interest rates change direction. Geopolitical events ripple through markets with unsettling speed. Technologies disrupt industries overnight, destroying the value of some assets and creating the value of others. This is frightening if you are not prepared for it. It is navigable, even advantageous, if you are. The people who consistently build wealth in volatile environments share a characteristic worth understanding. They separate their emotional response to volatility from their financial decisions about it. They feel the fear. They just do not let fear make the decision. The foundation. Financial bedrock. Before you can navigate volatility with any degree of equanimity, you need the kind of financial foundation that does not shake when markets do. This is the bedrock of structural stability that allows you to hold your positions through downturns rather than being forced to sell at the worst moment. The bedrock consists of 4 elements. The first is your emergency fund, as discussed, 3 to 6 months of expenses in accessible cash. The second is manageable debt, specifically, no high-interest consumer debt and a mortgage or other long-term debt that is comfortably within your ability to service even if your income were reduced. The third is diversification, not having all of your financial eggs in any single basket, whether that basket is a single stock, a single property, a single income source, or a single currency. The fourth is a long-term horizon that doesn't require liquidating investments in the near term, which gives you the freedom to wait out downturns rather than crystallizing losses. The opportunity. Thinking contrarily, Warren Buffett's most famous piece of advice, to be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful, sounds simple and is, actually, extraordinarily difficult to do. Because when markets are falling, and fear is in the air, and every headline is catastrophizing, the emotional pull towards selling and protecting yourself is almost overwhelming. But here is what the data consistently shows. The worst time to sell most assets is exactly when fear is highest, because that is typically when prices are lowest. And the best time to buy is exactly when fear is highest, because that is when the best assets are available at the lowest prices. The people who built significant wealth during the 2008 financial crisis were not the ones who avoided it. They were the ones who bought quality assets when everyone else was desperate to sell them. This does not mean you should welcome every downturn as an opportunity. Some downturns are catastrophic for specific assets that never recover. It means that developing the capacity to think clearly when fear is high is one of the most financially valuable skills you can build. Protecting against downside. Navigating volatility is not only about opportunity. It is also about protection. There are real risks in a volatile environment, and responsible financial behavior acknowledges them. Right arrow insurance. Adequate insurance, health, life, income protection, and property are not costs. It is a hedge against catastrophic downside risk. Review your coverage honestly. The question is not whether the premiums are expensive. The question is whether you can afford the alternative. Right arrow geographic and currency diversification. If all of your assets are denominated in a single currency and located in a single country, you are exposed to the full downside of any crisis specific to that country or currency. Even modest international diversification reduces this concentration risk. Right arrow regular rebalancing. Over time, the assets in a diversified portfolio will drift from their original allocations as different asset classes grow at different rates. Regular rebalancing, selling some of what has grown and buying more of what has lagged, maintains your risk profile and enforces a natural buy low, sell high discipline. Volatility is not your enemy. Reacting to volatility from fear, without a plan, without a foundation, without a long enough horizon, that is your enemy. Prepare the foundation. Then let the market do what markets do. Part 3, The Philosophy of Wealth. Chapter 6, Money and Meaning. We need to talk about what money is actually for, not in the abstract. In your life, specifically. One of the most common and quietly devastating traps in the pursuit of financial success is building a financial life that achieves its stated goals yet leaves you feeling empty. Money is a tool. An extraordinarily powerful, extraordinarily useful tool, but a tool nonetheless. Like all tools, it serves the person wielding it only to the extent that they have a clear sense of what they are trying to build. A hammer in the hands of someone who does not know what they are constructing is just a heavy object. The question of what money is for in your life is not a question to defer until you have enough of it. It is a question to answer first, because the answer shapes every financial decision you make. It determines which trade-offs you are willing to make and which you are not. It determines what enough actually means for you, a question that, without a clear answer, has a way of perpetually receding just beyond reach, the trap of infinite more. One of the most consistently documented findings in the psychology of wealth is the hedonic treadmill. The tendency for each increase in income or wealth to produce only a temporary increase in life satisfaction before the new level becomes the baseline and the desire for more reasserts itself. The research of economists Angus Deaton and Daniel Kahneman, which found that day-to-day emotional well-being stops improving significantly above a certain income level. The specific number varies by location and circumstance, but the principle is robust, suggests that beyond a certain point, more money is not buying more happiness. It is buying more of the feeling that you need more money. This is not an argument against financial ambition. It is an argument for financial intentionality. For knowing with genuine specificity what you are working toward and why, so that you can recognize when you have arrived and direct your energy accordingly. Designing your enough. What does financial freedom actually look like for you? Not the generic answer, not having to work, or being able to do whatever I want. The specific answer. The one that, if you achieved it, would allow you to say honestly, I am living the life I wanted to build. Right arrow. Describe your ideal, ordinary Tuesday, 10 years from now. Where are you? What are you doing? Who are you with? What are you not doing? What does this life actually cost per month? Right arrow. Identify the 3 things money could give you that would most meaningfully improve your quality of life. Not the most expensive things, the most meaningful ones. Right arrow. Identify the financial threshold at which you would feel genuinely secure, not rich, not abundant, but safe. What does that number look like? How far are you from it? What would it take to get there? These questions, answered honestly and specifically, do something that no financial strategy can do on its own. They give the strategy a destination. And a strategy with a destination is navigable in a way that an abstract pursuit of more never is. The goal was never the number in the account. The goal was always the life the number would make possible. Design life first, then build the number that funds it. Chapter 7, The Long Game. Building wealth that lasts. Wealth, the kind that is genuine and durable, is rarely built quickly. The stories that dominate our cultural imagination, the overnight success, the lucky investment that paid off 100-fold, the app that became a unicorn, are the exceptions so rare that they are newsworthy. They are not models for financial planning. They are lottery tickets with better odds. The actual process of building lasting wealth is considerably less dramatic. It is consistent. It is patient. It is, frankly, often boring. And it works with a reliability that the dramatic alternatives rarely match. The power of compounding, revisited Albert Einstein, is frequently, if perhaps apocryphally, credited with calling compound interest the 8th wonder of the world. Whether or not he said it, the mathematics are genuinely extraordinary. An investment of 10,000 units of currency, growing at 8% annually, becomes approximately 21,000 in 10 years. In 20 years, it will become approximately 47,000. In 30 years, it will become approximately 100,000 without a single additional contribution. The money is doing the work. Time is the variable that transforms modest beginnings into significant outcomes. This is why starting early matters so profoundly. and why the most expensive financial mistake most people make is not a bad investment. It is the years of not investing at all. Every year of delay is a year of compounding that cannot be recovered. Principles for the long game. The following principles are not novel. They are not exciting. They are the distillation of what consistently works across the full range of evidence on long-term wealth building. Right arrow, spend less than you earn, consistently. This sounds trivially obvious and is genuinely difficult in an environment designed to maximize your consumption. The gap between your income and your spending is the raw material of wealth. Protect. Invest the surplus automatically. The most effective way to ensure consistent investment is to make it automatic, a direct transfer from your income account to your investment account before you have a chance to spend it. What you don't see, you don't spend. Right arrow, hold through downturns. The biggest destroyer of long-term investment returns is not poor market performance. It is panic selling during downturns, crystallizing losses and missing the subsequent recovery. Your time horizon is your shield. Trust. Increase your investment rate as your income grows. Every income increase presents a choice. Upgrade your lifestyle or upgrade your financial security. The wealthy consistently choose, at least in part, the latter. Lifestyle inflation is the silent enemy of wealth accumulation. Right arrow, educate yourself continuously. The financial landscape changes. The specific knowledge that serves you well in 2026 will need updating in 2031. Build the habit of financial learning, not obsessively, not anxiously, but steadily. An hour a week of genuine financial education, sustained over years, compounds like interest. A final word on patience. The culture we live in is allergic to patience. Everything is optimized for speed, for instant feedback, for the dopamine hit of immediate results. Financial wealth building is almost entirely incompatible with this culture. It requires planting seeds, walking away, tending quietly, and trusting a process that unfolds over years and decades. This is not a limitation. It is a feature. Because the same qualities that build lasting wealth, consistency, patience, the willingness to delay gratification, and the ability to hold a long view are the qualities that build a lasting life. The financial journey, undertaken with intention and honesty, is also a character journey. You are not just building a portfolio. You are building a person who knows how to build. The best time to start was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. Not because today is magical, but because tomorrow you will wish you had started today. Begin.